Dr. Ian, thank you so much for joining me for this session. I have a lot of questions. The first one is more so on how ambitious the conversations have been, right? They've set some timelines specifically with Rwanda. I believe the SMRs will be deployed starting in the early 2030s and whatnot. And there's a lot of excitement around the space. And as someone who has studied the space and has basically also worked with a lot of researchers as well, you have a more holistic view on what the space actually looks like on a global scale, but then also on Africa's perspective as well. What kind of unique viewpoints do you have for the sector?
Well, I think I mean, if you look at the previous track record, you would definitely say those timelines are ambitious.
Yeah.
So what's really happening is you're testing the theory of building SMR reactors. Okay, so small, lower power, and largely the components are constructed in a factory and brought to site, and it's more of an assembly process when there's still an amount of construction and pouring concrete and things like that. But the process is meant to be a lot more sort of originating in a factory. So no one's really demonstrated that that's faster. I mean, in principle, it's faster, but we still have to wait and see.
In practice. So there might be a bit of a disconnect in what it looks like in theory, but versus what it is in reality.
And there's lots of things that can impact that. So when we had reactors built in the 1970s and into the 80s that were built very rapidly, the regulatory system was quite different. And so in some ways, it depends on what the regulatory system becomes in African countries. Is it as bureaucratic as it is in Western countries, which has, that's one of the main reasons why the reactors have become very expensive in Western countries, is the associated bureaucracy, which is related to safety.
Right.
But it's a question of whether whether it's safe enough with a slightly modified safety regime, which takes benefit of the 70 years of experience of building these reactors.
Now, as a professor and a researcher, I do understand there's always a bit of skepticism, at least with your approach. You always study the thing, and then you see the pros and then the cons. I'm curious about the cons.
I think the cons are, research done at University of Cambridge quite a long time ago now, in support of the Rolls-Royce SMR, suggested that really to make SMRs cost effective, you need to make between 15 and 20 of them. And that would likely be in a single factory. So my skepticism is there's 120 or more, slightly more maybe, SMR companies. There's going to have to be an extreme whittling down of that list of suppliers if we're going to recover all of the benefits of SMR, which are building out these large fleets, which is what happened when we had the very efficient nuclear energy systems like that. France is it had a single design, which is then built very quickly under a lighter regulatory regime.
Right. To do with political ambition, I personally am a bit on guard when it comes to how other Western powers are so interested in Africa's nuclear energy ambitions. What can you say about that, especially seeing the French, Chinese as well, and pretty much everyone? Yeah,
I think
it raises questions.
I would depend. It doesn't matter what your political persuasion is or preference for different global players.
Yeah.
You need to take that decision very carefully, because if you embark on a nuclear power project with a country, it is a century-long project. Okay, by the time you've actually deployed it, it's operated for potentially 80 years, and then you've waited and you've decommissioned it. It's a century.
Yeah.
So that would mean that you are dependent on the origin country of the supplier for your energy. And we know one of the motivations for going to nuclear power is to have energy sovereignty. So you want to weigh those decisions very carefully. That's all I'd say. Yeah.
That's a great insight. There's also a lot of conversation around investment into the space and how it needs a very special approach, a more tailored approach. Could you speak to that as well?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, if you have a nuclear power station which has been like run and paid off over, say, 10 to 15 years, I'm talking a larger one now, it is an absolute cash cow. And investing in that is extremely low risk. But then at the beginning, where you have the construction risk, there's very high risk.
Yeah.
And so there are mechanisms now with that risk is now, you try to spread, you have a very large risk and then a very low risk, and try to sort of smooth out that risk and distribute it amongst different people. So that's the way that I think the world is going.
Yeah.
I think you'll always need either a government or some other very strong financial institution which acts as the sort of insurer of last resort of the financial project.
I also had some conversations earlier with Lassina, and he was mentioning how, Dr. Lassina, and how he was mentioning basically how when it comes to financing the space, at the very least, these nations have to also back it up, right?
Yes.
So that it's not just the bankers and financiers that are taking the heavy load of the risk, right? Yeah. Now with obviously the World Bank also kind of lifting the ban on investing in nuclear energy, I think it's looking up. It's looking up for sure. But to your same point of sovereignty when it comes to this space, for sure, I think nations should then have the first step when it comes to financing their own nuclear energy.
Even in countries like UK, for the Rolls-Royce SMR, they funded 3 of those to be deployed in Wales.
Yeah.
Now, and what that's doing is to basically initiate this fleet concept and this build out. So the government is doing that bit, and then it's expecting private capital to really do the heavy lifting on the subsequent ones. Because once you've got to the 4th one, the theory is that it's going to be a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Now, as we reach the
and a lot safer, then a lot of the risk is gone because you've made 3 of them already, and we know what the problems are.
Right. As we kind of conclude this conversation, I want to maybe get your parting shots on some of the risks that still remain unaddressed, at least for this next generation of SMRs that are going to be deployed in Africa.
I think one of the issues I see is to have them operated and regulated by indigenous people. Whether that workforce training can happen fast enough, if indeed we get this very ambitious timescale fulfilled, are you going to have the workforce and the regulators ready to be a sovereign nuclear country where you run it and operate it yourselves?
Right.
And I think that's the ambition. I think energy ministers, prime ministers, presidents who've been at this conference, that's their ambition for their country, right? They don't want a foreign operator to be permanently in their country operating.
Right. And we've heard a lot about that, and also how even when it comes to human capital development, it's no longer a priority for them to kind of send out young African engineers and scientists within the nuclear space, but rather to build educational facilities here.
So one of the things we're doing at the University of Cambridge is we actually got a donation from a nuclear company, Nano Nuclear Energy, one of the sponsors of this conference, for a course director to create a remote course for a master's in nuclear energy. But that will only train probably about 30 or 40 people a year. It won't do it. So what the objective of that course really is to train the trainers. So we take people who aspire to work in universities in African countries, University of Rwanda, for example, which has just started a course, train those people, and then they train, then you've got a multiplication factor, and they can train the larger numbers that are going to be required.